Hi, Mindy. How are you?
Hey, Jana, it's so great to speak with you today. I'm doing well.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm excited. We're going to be talking a little bit about dating, relationships, sex, and intimacy. I know you and I have our own practices, so I'd love to hear a little bit about, what you're kind of seeing in your practice and, what are some of the big questions that your clients have?
Yes, so my practice is right um, on the border of Brickell, so kind of like the heart of Miami, definitely the financial district. And I work with a lot of young adults, millennials, who are developing in their careers and also their dating life. So I have a lot of talks around how do we date in this modern age? How do we experience connection when there's so much physical distance at times and emotional distance, and what makes for a positive, fun, and healthy relationship. So, those are a lot of the conversations of what walks in my door.
Amazing. So, those are some really wonderful introspective questions for, like you said, millennials to ask themselves. Have you found that there's been like a resolution or something that kind of helps them with dating in this modern age?
Dating in the modern age is definitely a good way to put it. Why? Because we do have so much more dating online through apps or a lot more texting. And what does that lead? It leads to a point of connection, but it can also lead to a point of very physical and emotional distance. I have a lot of conversations of why do I feel lonely when I'm on a date? Why do I feel disconnected from my friends, from dating when I have X amount of followers and so many likes on each post? But with more likes, more posts, it's almost, I feel this physical distance. So I'm seeing a lot of disconnect through social media, which can sound kind of crazy in what it means because social media's whole platform was we're going to connect you. But why today is it creating this emotional disconnect for a lot of these people coming into my office? So that's where I start. And also, how do we bridge that gap? How do we connect with dating in this new platform?
Yeah, so that's a really good point. I mean, is it even possible? Like, is it even possible to establish such a wonderful connection with, use of these platforms like social media, texting, dating apps? Is that, something that your clients have explored as well?
Yeah, well, I want to kind of break down the way I look at dating. So the way I look at dating, it's this in a perfect world, dating is this healthy balance between feeling secure with the person we're dating and seeking adventure. Expecting this predictability, but also this unknown, wanting to feel safe and reliable and that this person is there, but also I want it to be risky and dangerous and unknown and let's go on a journey and it's such a mystery. So we have these two sides of our dating. Okay, they're both there. They're both needed at times. What I believe and what I see is how is Miami's society, how is Miami's culture coming into these two sides of us? And what I believe is that the society is amping up this need for the adventure, the risk, the unknown, the journey. So a lot of us are kind of going into that realm and society's kind of pushing us there. And so we don't have as strong of a platform on the security predictability. What does that do? Well, I have to protect myself, right? I don't want to feel hurt in dating. So I may put up an emotional wall. I may keep an emotional distance from you because I'm having so much fun with you and this is great and we don't know where the night's going to end. It's kind of a mystery. My adrenaline's going. But also, this other safety side is not being met as much. And the cause of that is I have to keep you so far distant, right? I want to be with you, but I
Mm-hmm.
can only let you in so far because this other side of me is not being fulfilled. So I'm seeing a
Wow.
lot of that coming up.
That's incredibly deep, incredibly profound, realizing, because it sounds like, you know, clients and just us as people come to the realization that the challenges that we have with dating is almost our own doing. Like, we can certainly maybe blame technology, we can blame, the app culture, the swipe culture, but ultimately it's us and our own walls that we're creating in our lives. Would you say that that's kind of the realization that people might come to?
Yeah, of course, of course. So what is social media trigger in us? Like you were just saying, I think you were hitting on it, is it can make us jealous at times. So
Right.
the person that I'm dating or I'm attracted to, I'm seeing all over Facebook or Instagram that they're doing all these things, that they're with other people, they're showing attention to other women or men, whatever. What does that trigger me? It triggers jealousy. And jealousy, it's like a word that we all kind of cringe at and we want to run away from. But I encourage my clients to go into jealousy, use jealousy, be aware of it, say the word. Why? Because it can help us, right? So jealousy is something we always strive away from. I'm not jealous. I'm not jealous. I'm just offended. I'm not jealous. I'm angry. No, it's okay to have this jealous feeling. That jealousy, that feeling is telling us, well, what am I doing? Maybe I have this emotional distance that I'm not letting somebody else in, that they're not getting the message that I'm interested in. Maybe I'm not getting the message that they're not interested. But if I shy away from this feeling, I don't really know exactly what's going on for me. It
Wow.
is okay to feel this way, and we don't have to feel bad about it. It's basically saying, I would like to feel that attention and love from that person that I assume that they're giving to somebody else. I'm perceiving it that way.
So it sounds like then the work really is about feeling secure and confident and vulnerable enough to really voice it to that person, and maybe even voice it to ourselves, like, yeah, this is what I need, this is what I want, and I'm feeling really down about not having that. So it sounds like that work is in really sharing it and owning it.
Right, right. And as you're kind of peeling back these layers, you bring up then vulnerability. And it's such a word that we talk about all the time, but it's how can I be vulnerable with you? Well, in order for me to feel vulnerable with you, I have to be able to be vulnerable with myself. And in that way, through doing that, I have to create my sense of self. A lot of people will refer to it like I have to create my self esteem. I really like to say just my sense of self. I kind of look at it as, let's develop your core and we'll develop you, and understand you. And in doing that, if I understand myself, I kind of look into myself, I see my flaws, I see my strengths, then if somebody rejects me, I can handle it. I can I can move on, because I have this core sense of self. I'm able to use my rational, reasonable mind of saying, okay, that one just didn't work out, versus, oh no, there's something wrong with me.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So in therapy, I imagine that's something that, you work on with clients, is developing their healthy sense of self.
Yeah, their awareness sense of self, like learning them. Sometimes we have these deep core beliefs of, I'm not worthy or I'm not good enough, and when they're so embedded down in us, they're very difficult to correct or challenge. Sometimes we just have to know that that message is there,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah,
it's not true. It doesn't always have to be true. I don't have to feel that.
right. And I wonder, because we're talking about, intimacy as well. So in that, like, let's say sexual intimacy, romantic intimacy? Are you finding that your clients are having trouble navigating that aspect of their lives?
When I think a lot of things come out during sex, right? Because it's like a very vulnerable time.
Right.
So I always use what happens in sex. It's kind of like a symbol for what's going on in the relationship then. And when my clients tell me about what the sex experience is, it's almost then that we can feel the closeness or the distance.
Absolutely. And so when that comes up, it sounds like the clients are trying to make sense of it.
And it can oftentimes be very hard to try to make sense of it, because if sex is supposed to be like this language, this experience, so I kind of ask them, okay, if you're speaking a language, you're having this experience, what message do you want to send to your partner?
Yeah.
Right. And I think what I hear a lot of what's going on is so many people are spending time in the other person's head. Oh my God, what do they think of me? Does this feel good for them? Do they think I'm hot, sexy? So the whole time, oftentimes the other person's in the other person's head.
Absolutely.
But we miss our own experience then.
Yeah, it's almost like, and that's something that I talk about with my clients as well, is
Mhm.
are you allowing yourselves to be free, to be present in the moment, to experience all of what's coming up for you, whether it is that anxiety about the moment, whether it is, that pleasure about the moment, whether it is um, the newness about that moment. So it sounds like a lot of that anxiety that does come up gets in the way of being able to be present.
Completely, because when we're always thinking about our partner, what are we doing? We're creating this distance of they're more important than us. This moment is more important for them. Their pleasure is more important than mine. So I'm putting these people on a pedestal while I'm pushing myself down. Now, there needs to be this balance that both people enjoy pleasure in the moment, right? In this experience, and maybe at times it's different through the act. But I can't always be in my partner's head and worrying about what I'm looking like or am I satisfying them when I'm just putting my own self below and putting them up.
Absolutely. So that's very interesting. And I'm wondering, when you're working with clients around sex and intimacy, how can, sorry, I'm flubbing in my words, but how do you support with getting clients to be more present in that area of their lives?
Mm-hmm. Being more present. So going back, right? We do have to understand our bodies and we have to understand what we like. Okay. So when do I feel turned on? When do I feel sexy? Right? Answer those questions. Understand when when you feel good, when foreplay is exciting to you. Okay. Also answer, when do I not feel turned on? Maybe when I'm feeling bad about myself, maybe when I don't feel like I like my body, not feeling good about the way I look that day. All these things, right? I'm talking very surface level, but they have much deeper meanings underneath, right? And in that moment, I'm maybe going to feel more disconnected with myself. I'm going to have more guards up with myself. So we need to make that connection with ourselves and try to figure out how to make that connection with our partner. But we also have to feel safe with our partner and comfortable with our partner. I feel a lot of times people that I'm seeing kind of jump into sex hoping that will build the connection.
Hmm.
And it's almost like it highlights the emotional distance.
Right. So that's helpful to hear. So it sounds like a lot of introspective questions to explore with oneself around their bodies, around pleasure, around sexual intimacy, to really inform them, but then also to inform maybe prospective partners for that person.
And I want to do a shout out to men because I work with a lot of men, and a lot of them come in saying very similar things, but it's something men don't talk about outside of my therapy room. I've worked with a lot of men in their 30s and 40s who are saying, I have a lot of performance anxiety. I have so much anxiety that it's really difficult for me to be hard because I'm so in my head about the porn I've watched because that man looks really good. And I want to give my partner an amazing experience, so she goes and tells all her friends. Like, oh my gosh. So, okay, now we have us comparing ourselves to this unrealistic sex life. And we have these men looking at, well, that looks good. That woman seems to be enjoying it. I want to give that. But is that also what the woman wants? I don't know. But the conversation is being had between you and a video you watched versus you and your partner.
Right. And
Mm-hmm.
I definitely want to mention that aspect as well, because one of the things that I see in my practice, and this is more with long-term relationships, so people that have been together for a while, or individuals that are married, and there seems to be a misunderstanding of expectations, because what I often talk to my clients about is desire and arousal.
Mm-hmm.
At the beginning of, let's say, relationships, everything is new, everything is exciting, we're kind of bonding with our oxytocin chemicals, and often desire precedes arousal. And what ends up happening in long-term relationships is that the order actually switches. Arousal precedes desire. So I'll have this talk with clients because they'll say, why I'm just not feeling it. I feel like I have a really low libido. I don't understand why I'm not as energetic about sex as I used to be. And of course, at the beginning, we always have to make sure that we rule out things like medical and other mental health concerns that might be impacting libido. But once, those aspects have been ruled out, um, it's important to understand and have healthy expectations that, yeah, it can feel routine, or sometimes it's just about getting your body turned on before that desire comes into play. So I have individuals consider that concept as well when it comes to sex and sexuality with their partners, because you know we shouldn't have these expectations that necessarily we are going to be just like we were sexually at the beginning of our relationship. It ebbs and flows, it
Right.
always evolves. and,
Mm-hmm.
and let's really look at desire and arousal. And I'm not saying that it's not something that couples can work on. They of course can work on it, but let's look at what our expectations are, and are these realistic and healthy expectations, or are they expectations that are setting us up for failure?
Mm-hmm. And you talk about expectations, and I know you work more with long-term couples. So one of the things I talk about expectations when I deal with people who are dating, and that can be a really difficult conversation to have if that conversation is even had. Sometimes it can be in the moment, and sometimes it can just be not at all. So I think we feel, for people who are newly dating, this societal pressure of, okay, well, women are saying, and also telling men, and men are also perceiving, okay, well, women like what we see in porn. Women like it hard and fast. I like it rough. And I've heard women come in and say that to me, and men. And I wonder how much of that is a societal pressure that's coming, right? I want to be, I want to be able to be a part of. This seems to be the trend. So it's almost like we're being influenced by society, even in the bedroom, and it's kind of leading us down this path of, well, I'm not really learning my body or what I like. I'm almost kind of being told or shown, or this is what my friends are saying too. So therefore, for me, it should be true, or I also should feel that way, or I don't want to be different. So I'm seeing a lot of the same similar sex patterns coming in.
Mhm.
And then, okay, how do we have that conversation of expectations or going back or learning our bodies of what we do like? Because sometimes we come in, for me, people who are younger and kind of learning their bodies, we have to kind of go back. Okay, let's explore what you like. What does
Right.
that even look like? What does that feel like for you? Let's leave everyone else out right now and just understand you. So then eventually, when we are in those long term relationships or just for the one night, we're able to relay that and have a pleasurable experience for both.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing to me how many couples have been together for so long and haven't talked about, what their needs and core values are. And so when I work with, couples and individuals, we really dive into that. And it's not to necessarily shame people, but it's like, we have to know what we want, desire, and need in life. And we have to know, what our negotiables are. So what we're willing to compromise on and what we're not willing to compromise on. So we definitely look at core values in long-term relationships, whether we want to have kids, what are our core values around religion, what are our values and desires, with marriage. And it's amazing because, actually see people become more assertive when they really look at these aspects of their lives and explore these aspects of their lives because they realize, oh yeah, like this is what I want and I'm not willing to shift in this or sway with this. And it's incredibly empowering for individuals to realize, what their needs are. And a lot of that is related to sex and intimacy as well. So I really enjoy having those conversations because it really gets people to think. And some people, it takes them a little bit longer. They don't know necessarily what their values are around marriage or around religion, let's say. They are concerned or they're not sure, and that's okay too. We just take a little bit more time to really explore those aspects of a person's life. I do notice, however, that when people become more assertive and feel strong, like you said, in their sense of self, of what they want, their sex lives actually greatly improve
Right.
because they're not afraid of stating and asking for what they want. They're not um, unsure of themselves as they used to be. They're not as anxious about the experience because they're strong in who they are and secure in who they are. So it's quite amazing how, developing your own sense of self actually greatly improves your sexual experiences.
Right. That feeling of being secure in your own self with that protection, then we can be more vulnerable. I wanted to ask you and you're saying that you've met with people who've been married for some time and they still haven't had these conversations. What do you think is going on inside the marriage that would maybe deter somebody from speaking about their pleasures?
Yeah, so it can be for a variety of reasons.
Mhm.
It can be, I often like to look at people's upbringings around, what they witnessed in terms of like their parents' relationships or if their parents were married, and what that was like and what were the spoken and unspoken rules around the household. So I'll often ask, so how did you guys communicate, growing up when you were growing up with your parents? Was there a lot of things that were open, or was there a lot of things that it was just not spoken and you had to figure it out for yourself? So if somebody grew up in a household where they just didn't really talk, or it wasn't really encouraged to talk or celebrated to talk, they're not really going to talk in their relationship. They might just try to deal with things on their own inside, or they might not feel safe enough to talk about it with their partner. I would say safety is a huge thing, because if stuff is not really talked about, then I always ask, do you feel safe to share that this is your experience, or do you feel safe to really talk about these topics? I also see some couples that maybe got married very young. So there might have been a level of immaturity with them. And that's okay. I mean, in our early 20s, we don't necessarily know to have these conversations. So there's that aspect as well, where some couples just got married very early in life and didn't know to explore these concepts. And with other couples, I also look into what is their dynamic? Is there codependency involved? Is there a level of people pleasing involved? So I look into the dynamic of the couple, because that's huge, and it shares a lot of information about why certain things are happening, why certain things aren't happening, and why maybe some things are not necessarily talked about. So there are many different factors. I also, look at culture. So I always ask my clients, what's your cultural background? Tell me more about that culture, because sometimes in certain cultures, like I said, it's not encouraged to talk about heavy topics. It's just encouraged to get married, you have kids, and that's your life, basically. So we all also look at that.
Right. Wow. Everything's like very multifaceted, but I love how you do bring up those messages because, when we're a kid, that's our first impression of sex or whatever it is that we're receiving messages about.
Absolutely. I'll ask, what were your conversations around sex growing up with family? And more often than not, I'll hear from a lot of adults that will say, well, we didn't really talk about it. It was not encouraged to talk about sex. I learned about it, kind of how you're saying, like over the internet or through porn or through sex ed in middle school. And again, really, these are not comprehensive, true educations around sex. I mean, what I usually, when I talk about porn, I'm not someone that is necessarily against it, but I always, share with people, like, is this real? Is this what sex truly is? And more often than not, I'll hear the answer of, well, no, these are performers, these are actors. It's not necessarily real. And it's hard, especially, in my work that I've done in the past with kids, when anytime the conversation around this has come up, I always instill the fact that, this isn't necessarily what sex maybe looks like in the real world. Like,
Right.
you you can explore that within yourself, and eventually, of course, with kids, you always want to say when you're old enough, um, with a partner. So, I it's important to look at these multifacets. And I also, again, my work is with couples and individuals, is about expectations. If you expect for yourself to, engage sexually like somebody would in a porn video, I don't know how realistic that is.
And we see a lot of that today. We see a lot of people
Absolutely.
learning from videos because maybe they don't want to go to their parents for many reasons. And a lot of men that I see are not having some of those conversations.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I wanted to just announce some, like a tip kind of for dating to get in before we get into this part. So kind of just going backwards before we get to the sex part. But when you're looking for finding the right partner for you, identify what would be foundational pillars for you. No one will fulfill them 100%, but in finding healthy relationship, what are my foundational pillars? And people be like, well, I don't know. Some of the ones that are very common, almost all of us have, are the idea of respect, feeling respected from our partner, and also the idea of friendship from our partner, that we can have fun, we can have that playful side. You are my friend as well as my partner. And the last one is feeling connected with our partner, but also feeling individuality, meaning I can be connected with you, but I also have a world. So when we date someone, always looking to, I'm going to become a part of their world. They are going to become a part of my world. I see a lot of like power and control issues coming in when dating. So we're never trying to take something away from a partner, but we have to be a part of each other's worlds.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a Venn diagram.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I also, particularly with men, because you talked about the performance anxiety piece, particularly with men, the other conversation that I have is understanding the difference between performance or goal oriented sex and pleasure oriented sex. And often, performance oriented sex, again, just like it sounds, focuses on the performance, focuses on orgasm, focuses on ejaculating, things like that. And it's not necessarily about, like we've talked about, being in the moment. And that's why I always encourage a shift from performance oriented sex to pleasure oriented. So, meaning, just again, like how it sounds, how can we create pleasure for ourselves, for each other, and letting go of this idea that you have to get to the end goal, let's say, of having an orgasm, ejaculating, all of that. Really, it's just about, again, being in the moment without necessarily that goal. It's not to say that that's not going to happen, but being open to whatever happens. And more often than not, anxiety tends to dissipate when we shift from performance oriented to pleasure oriented sex. So I always like to have that conversation as well, because it makes such a big difference and it's a huge shift. And, the goal again is, how can we add more pleasure? How can we enhance pleasure? How can we feel more positive and secure? And oftentimes it's about letting go of these unhealthy and unrealistic expectations.
I really like how you said that. The pleasure oriented. That's great.
Yeah, I love it.
Well, thank you so much for speaking with me and telling me more about like what you're seeing in your practice with couples who are more established versus the dating world here in the Miami area.
Yeah, it's incredibly interesting to hear about it. But my hope is that the more conversations like you and I have, and the more and more people talk about this, the less shame, hopefully, that they feel related to feeling, maybe lost or not sure, insecure. I like that we're having this conversation so that people know, like, there is help for any of these experiences, and there are ways in which, you can also improve it too.
Completely. All right, more to come.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.